Flintlock Siege of Dawn is a game that I had high hopes for after playing the demo that was provided on Steam Next Fest. Safe to say that after playing the game after launch, it left me rather disappointed. Let's get into it. First and foremost, when you fire up Flintlock Siege of Dawn, one of the things that will come to your attention is the game's visuals. Don't get me wrong, the visuals themselves are not groundbreaking, but it is a pretty game with character models having lots of detail and environments and art style pretty good overall across the board, and it has a very nice look to the game in terms of presentation. Once you get into the game, one of the things you'll notice is the game's overall tutorial. Now, the tutorial throughout the game is very in-depth. It gives you not only detailed explanation of what and how to use the skills, but also gives you an in-game visual on how it works. And overall, I felt that the tutorials and the tips were very deep and easy to understand, that allows any player to get into the game system. And I enjoyed it more than I would expect from other games. Usually they're very vague with these kinds of things, but it was quite detailed, something that I was very happy to see. When you start actually playing the game, the combat is what will stick out for the most part. The combat in this game can otherwise be described as God of War light. If you've played Ragnarok and you've played 2018 or have at least seen it, you'll see that the combat here is very similar with a little bit of sprinkle of souls. The reason I say a sprinkle of souls is because much like a Souls game, you do have a currency that if you die, you lose that currency and then you have to go and retrieve it, and that currency is what is required to level up to unlock skills as well as buy upgrades for your gear. But aside from this, the core gameplay can be described as a God of War light. And I say light because while it looks and plays like it's God of War, it's far more simple. Combos are very simple. Your attacks are very simple. There's a lack of variety with both your attacks as well as enemy attacks, especially on bosses. There's just a lack of variety, a lack of depth in terms of overall combat and what you can do. This obviously spews into the boss fights because the bosses themselves can be broken up into two categories. You have your regular bosses that are nothing special. Then you have your main storyline bosses, which are in the form of the gods. The story of the game is it is a revenge story against the gods. So when you fight the gods, those boss fights have multi-layers. There's a lot more depth to them. And those are the ones that are more compelling. While the rest of the bosses against regular enemies, they're okay. The attack pattern is very simple. They don't have a lot of variety in terms of their attacks. And it gets quite easy to read. Then the last thing I'll touch on is Enki himself. Enki is your companion. He is a god that is on your side. And the big thing with him is not only is he used for magic attacks and stunning enemies, but he's also a tool for traversal where you can traverse the map much more quickly. It is a nice little touch, and it was always fun to traverse using Enki and his skills for that aspect of the game. The other thing I want to touch on, and I'm kind of indifferent on it, is the minigame Sibo. Sibo is basically a form of checkers where if you are attacking, you have to form a triangle to win the match, and if you're defending, you have to prevent them from making a triangle. This mode, or this minigame, was actually not that great in my opinion. It wasn't that much fun, and the rewards for it weren't that great. Whereas if you played Queen's Blood in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, that was very addicting and very rewarding because of what you got for beating every single person who played that game. Now as for the negatives of this game, what made it disappointing. First and foremost is the story and characters. The story in this game is a revenge story, but there's no context to it. There's no context as to your main protagonist, as why she feels connected. You don't really get in depth with the characters and the relationships to feel why she feels what she feels. And the overall story, it's just weak across the board. And again, when I say this game is God of War light, it's as I'm saying it's God of War, but a much lower quality across the board. Customization was another disappointing aspect. Customization is very, very simple. You have 3 categories and tiers to upgrade your character. One is for melee, one's for magic, and one's for your guns, and that's about it. In terms of upgrading your weapons, it's literally just a stat boost using materials that you find along the world. There's no real builds in this game. Where if you compare it to, for example, God of War, there was different armor sets that did different things, and you could actually have some sort of a build for how Kratos is going to play. There is no build here. It's she plays the same front to back. It's what other perks that you have added on. So the customization is quite weak. And then one of the stores also allow you to buy cosmetics, and all of the cosmetics, in my opinion, were uninspiring. And it's since they require the same currency you use for upgrading your gear and your abilities, it was kind of meaningless to have them in there, and it's just a waste in my opinion. Lastly, I want to talk about is the jank in this game. Flintlock, when I played the demo, it was quite polished. When I played the actual game, there was a lot of jank in this game. And it goes beyond, there was an instance where you're fighting with NPCs, and the NPC AI was just stationary. They weren't moving, they weren't reacting. That was one of the things that I've seen. Another jank is you have secondary weapons that every time you rest, you have to reload them. They will start empty. This I found was very, very tedious, because if you forgot to reload after a rest and you're in a situation where you want to use that weapon, you'll instantly find, oh wait, I have to reload again because I rested. And the fact that the secondary weapons didn't come preloaded was very irritating if you forgot to reload them right after resting. I don't know why they did that, but that to me, it was stupid. You know, if you rest, those weapons should already have been reloaded with ammo ready to go, not having to reload it right away. I felt that that was a waste and very tedious in my opinion. Finally, difficulty scaling. The game's difficulty scaling is all over the place. You'll play the game and you'll be like, okay, it's this level, and then out of nowhere, there's a huge spike. And then it goes back down again, and then there's another huge spike. The difficulty, it's not, usually as you progress through a game, the scaling, it's supposed to be like a straight line where it gets gradually harder and harder as you learn new skills and get stronger. In this game, it's up and down. One moment, it's incredibly hard. Another moment, it's not. And it was all over the place, and I never like any game that has this kind of issue where difficulty just jumps back and forth. It doesn't make for good pacing or good design, and I feel that it's very irritating when that happens. So overall, I enjoyed Flintlock Siege of Dawn as a Game Pass title. If you have Game Pass, both Xbox or PC, it's definitely worth checking out in that regard. If you don't and you're thinking about purchasing this game, I would wait for it to be about $20 or so, because chances are, if you're a Souls fan or you're a fan of God of War, you played those games, this game just won't measure up across the board. Across the board, this game will fall flat in comparison to those games in every single spectrum, with the only one being reasonably acceptable is the overall visuals, because I do think the game looks good visually. But aside from that, I feel like the game was a letdown across the board, especially considering what's out there. So as a Game Pass title, definitely check it out. If not, I would wait for a sale and buy it for like $20 if you're curious. Overall, I did enjoy my time, but I just can't recommend it in good faith at the price point that it is. I'm giving Flintlock Siege of Dawn a 6.5 out of 10. This is Veteran Gamer, and I hope to see you guys next time.